All right, we're at 10:01 by my clock. So, and it looks like folks are pretty much logged in. We might have a few people join in. So, but you can rewatch this. I think they're recording it, so it will be posted on our website for later use as well. So today we're going to talk about designing for the fall landscape. My name is Alice O'Loughlin. I'm a landscape designer with the Chalet Landscape Division out of North Chicago. We're actually not out of the retail office, like some people think I work in Wilmette, but I actually work in North Chicago or sometimes at home, like you see behind me. For those of you who are not overly familiar with Zoom, you know, at the bottom of your screen, if you move your cursor down, you'll see a little thing pop up at the bottom, and you'll see a thing that says chat on it, and it's like a little cartoon mouth bubble. If you have questions throughout the webinar, I want you to put them in that chat, and I will stop periodically and check that chat for questions or comments. It's hard to look at my notes, look at the screen, look at the presentation, and then check chat all the time. So we'll just stop periodically and check there for questions. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to add them to that chat anytime. So we're going to get started here. I'm going to share my screen so you can see my presentation. Share. Okay. Hoping if everyone can see this. If you cannot, please speak up for me. And say something in the chat if you cannot see this. So screen a little bit. Okay. So designing for the fall landscape. Okay. So today's discussion, we're going to talk about several things in the fall landscape. We all know our maple trees that get the beautiful colors to them, but there's other things too that happen in the fall landscape. Including late bloomers. It's not just trees that change fall color as well. There's lots of perennials and shrubs that change colors. And then beyond just leaf color, we have dried flower heads that add interest to the landscape. There's trees that fruit this time of year, not just edible, you know, and some's good and some's not good. And those are all things we have to consider when we are designing for our landscape. Talk a little bit about annuals that are good for the fall, and then some sounds and smells that we like to incorporate into landscape design as well when we're thinking about the fall landscape. And then finally, planning for next year. And sort of what you should be doing now as things are winding down before you kind of get launched into next year. You're not done yet. So, so late bloomers. Some things don't like it hot, like, you know, amber carpet roses, for instance, come to mind. So I have amber carpet roses in my front lawn, and they bloom beautifully early in the spring and early summer. Then by mid-late summer, the Japanese beetles start moving in. It gets really hot, and they kind of stop flowering. So, but once it starts to cool off again, they start to enjoy it again. So they start to rebloom this time of year. And then we have, you know, there's a couple of things that, you know, you didn't think it was going to do anything, and here it goes. And then the importance of the pollinators on some of these things that are late bloomers as well. So the first one I put is my favorite small tree, the Heptacodium myconoides. It's called the seven sun flower tree. I think it's bad naming, frankly, is part of the problem. It's not a flower at all. It gets 15 to 20 feet high, full to part sun. It gets this lovely, cute little white flower in early September, which is now over. And then after it flowers, it gets these red calyxes or bracts, which is sort of the outer shell of that flower. Those stay on the tree and they turn like a deep rosy red. It's beautiful. And this thing is swarmed with bees when it blooms. They love it. It's a native. It has the added bonus of in the wintertime, it gets a shaggy sort of peeling bark. It's just a great tree to use like near a patio or as an understory tree. I have it right off of my patio in my backyard. The thing to be cautious with is you've got to be true to it. So his first year or two, he's going to have quite a bit of dieback. He'll lose about 20% when the spring comes around. So he's going to have an awkward shape for a while. But after a couple of years, once he's established, then he'll sort of get this nice rounded shape that you see in this picture up here. But you know, give him time, but it's a great tree. He's really easy. Love this tree. Some flowers that are late bloomers. Rudbeckia. We all know Rudbeckia, of course. There's a lot of different cultivars of Rudbeckia and new ones coming out all the time. A couple of years ago, Intrinsic came out with this variety, the American Gold Rush, which I really like. I use this guy almost exclusively now when doing Rudbeckias. He's not as tall. He's about like knee height or so. He doesn't flap like so many of the bigger varieties do. So he's got a nice strong stem. It fills in super quick. We can plant them like 36 inches basically. And like within a year or two, you'll have a pillow of this yellow fall. Really nice plant. Calamint. I love this plant. I'm gonna say that a lot, by the way. I love everything because I'm obviously picking my favorites to show you. But Calamint, Nepeta, Montrose White in particular, is a really nice perennial. So it dies all the way back in the wintertime. It just kind of goes away completely. But this plant, you can hear it before you see it. So it's along my walkway, and when I get about 2 to 3 feet away, you hear the buzz of the bees on it. So someone near, I live in Lake County and I'm near the Farm Bureau office there on 45, and they have honeybees over there, a ton of honeybee hives. And so they make it all the way over to my garden here about a half a mile away. And this thing is covered with honeybees. You know, sometime it starts blooming in like late summer and it's still going out. This picture here was just taken about a week ago in my front garden, and it's still going strong. And it stays upright too. So like you see, you know, those of you who know your plants see Nepeta and you're thinking the traditional catmint, which gets kind of like into a floppy hot mess usually this time of year. This guy doesn't. He has a nice strong structure to him. He stays upright. Joe Pyeweed. So Joe Pyeweed is a native. This is a native var, as I say, which is a cultivar of a native. Eutrochium dubium. He changed genuses a couple of years ago, for those of you who may be confused. But there's a couple of Joe Pyeweeds. So the straight species gets pretty tall, like 8 feet-ish. This little Joe is more like in the 4-foot range. And then there's baby Joe as well, which is really little. But he's nice. I love decorating with him because, or designing with him, decorating, like it's my sofa. I love designing with him because he, again, stays upright. He doesn't flop. He's got these nice red stems, which I find really interesting. He's a late bloomer, and the pollinators, again, love him. Tons of butterflies on this thing when you plant it. They'll take to it like water. And he looks great if you pair it with grasses. There's a few things I'll talk about pairing with grasses, and this is one of them. They blend really nicely with grasses in the landscape. Calicarpa. So this is one I will admit we do not use often enough. So Calicarpa, again, a native called Beauty Berry. I think it's called Beauty Bush or Purple Beauty Bush is another common name that I've seen for it. He's awesome. So he gets these purple flowers on him, which are blooming probably about a week ago. And then in another couple of weeks, the flowers will turn to these clusters of purple berries, like up and down the stem of the plant, kind of like a bubblegum purple almost. So the tricky thing with this guy is that, again, he's great because he's a late bloomer in the fall here, but he does die all the way back in the wintertime. So you cut him to the ground. Now he gets he's a big boy when he gets going. Like he can be like 4 to 6 feet high and wide. So you got to be prepared for sort of a blank spot in your garden if you plant this guy. So he's really good sort of like along the back border or someplace where you don't mind having naked ground for a while. He takes a little while to come up in the spring as well. So he can be challenging, but he's such a cool looking plant. Anemones. So anemone, September charm, it's in the name. It blooms in September. There's anemones that bloom in the spring as well. This one is a fall blooming anemone. He's got a buddy who's white, honorary something. I like September charm, very reliable plant. Again, gets these nice little pink flowers on him. And the cool thing I love about him is see these little seed heads, like these little round seed heads on top. So if they catch a breeze, they kind of bounce around in the wind. It's kind of like, I call it the bobblehead plant because they're just kind of happy and bouncy, and he's a good, reliable plant. You might take a year or two to kind of really get settled in and get going, but he's a great plant. Symphotrochium oblongifolium, October skies. So this falls into the you're not going to do anything, are you, category. So I've planted this before. Tough plant. And I had it in my backyard when I lived in Chicago. And it was just kind of a green meatball for the longest time. And my husband's like, is this going to do anything? I'm like, yeah, it's gonna, you just got to wait. In August, is this going to do anything? Yep, no, not yet. September, is this going to do anything? I don't think it's going to do anything, Alice. It's going to do something, just wait. And then October, oh my gosh, did you see that plant in the backyard? It's full of purple flowers and there's bees all over it. It's like, well, yeah, exactly. So October skies for a reason. It's not until like well into October that this guy's going to bloom. He's not even doing anything yet. So he's really great in that. If you can live with a green meatball for a long time, he's a great plant to have. Now he is kind of messy looking. You know, it's not like the, you know, little mums that you get this time of year, nice and tidy. He's kind of a hot mess, and you can't trim him back because you'll cut off the flower buds. So you have to just be prepared that this is not, if you like a perfectly manscaped yard, this is not the plant for you, but great late color. Hydrangea palmatus. This is one you don't see very often, right? I don't know if they sell it like in big box stores. I'm pretty sure they have it at Chalet and Wilmette. But Hydrangea, yellow wax bells, again, perennial, dies all the way back every year. And he gets these little yellow flowers on him here. You can see they're kind of eggplant shaped, and they don't really open much more than this guy here on the corner. But it's just, they're cool because it has this nice leaf that's sort of, you know, shaped like a maple almost. And then the flowers sit above it. And it's another one that's kind of cool in the breeze. It kind of moves and bounces around a little bit. It's happiest on a wet slope. So that's kind of an unusual location. Here it's at the Botanic Garden, and this is the bridge as you've just kind of gone through the crabapple alley there, and you're kind of heading over to Evening Island. There's a huge stand of this on the left side, and it's very happy because, again, it's on a wet slope. So if you have like a swale in your yard or something like that, this is a great plant to put along that area. Perovskia, Russian sage. This is another one that goes really well with grasses. He flaps. So I took this picture on purpose because you find a lot of pictures where it looks all pretty and upright. And I'm like, no, this is what he does. Actually, he kind of lays down this time of year, although he's still blooming. So, you know, you got to take the good with the bad, right? But if you plant him kind of mixed in with like a Karl Förster grass or Korean feathery grass or something that can really kind of hold itself up, it will help hold him up as well and keep him from flopping over. So it's kind of the trick to working with Perovskia is to kind of intermix him with like a sturdy grass that's around the same height. The other trick to Perovskia, and this will shock your neighbors, is that 4th of July weekend, cut off 2/3 of the plant, like right about there, which sounds insane because he'll be flowering 4th of July. But you're going to cut off like 2/3 of it. And what it does is it actually forces an even longer bloom period, and it makes the stalk a little stronger. It'll still flop a little bit, probably not this bad, probably like this bad, like a 45-degree angle. But that's kind of one of the tricks to kind of keeping this guy upright. There's a lot of, by the way, there's a lot of perennials you can kind of do that 4th of July chop to. There's something called the Chelsea chop, which you can Google. It sort of coincides with the Chelsea Flower Show in England, and it's around the 4th of July. So there's a lot of things that kind of do well by being cut back hard around that time of year. But yeah, Russian sage, great plant. Clematis ternifolia. So there's someone out there kind of like rolling their eyes right now. I can hear you. Clematis ternifolia is sweet on clematis. Now this is one you got to watch your location. Okay, you can't. it's a bad idea to put him where he's going to grow like over your favorite, you know, bed of some tight ground cover, right? And here's why. He drops seeds. So he's very prolific. Like this thing is probably cut back every year. This is about a year's growth on here, believe it or not. He grows like a weed, and then he'll flower late, like we like, and then he'll drop his seeds pretty much straight down. They have weight to them. So you can see here, he's planted in a great spot because he's planted over pavement. So he's less apt to seed, right? That seed's probably not going to take if it's sitting on concrete where you can, get it off. The other thing is to plant him sort of like near a lawn. You're going to mow over it anyway. It'll eventually kind of mow out any seedlings that might kind of land on the yard. But he's a great one. It's just watch your location on this guy. So I'm going to stop, check the chat box. No questions or anything happening here. So that's great. Okay, we'll keep moving on. So some other things to think about when we look at fall is sort of like who's the first to go. Mind what's behind you, right? So look at the backdrop. And then some other plants that have a fall color beyond just trees and such. So Glitticea, the thornless honey locust. So we actually call this an indicator plant in the profession. He is the first tree to start to lose his leaves, to change color, and then to lose them as well, is the thornless honey locust. So we started seeing them go several weeks ago. And so we kind of note, at least I do, sort of like where we are in comparison to last year when they started to go. And so it's always interesting. The great thing about Glitticeas, and I love this tree, it's such a great street tree. You see them everywhere. You can plant under them. They're pretty forgiving with sun, right? Because they are the first to lose their leaves. They're also the last to get their leaves in the spring. So there's plenty of sun hitting the ground underneath them. So it's a great place for bulbs, right? Because they're going to have a chance to soak up all that sun before this guy starts to leaf out. And anything that takes like dappled shade, you can plant underneath a honey locust. And it's unlike a maple. Maple roots tend to be really close to the ground and thick. It's really hard to plant under a maple tree just because of the roots and the thirst, and they're so dense canopy. Honey locust, it's pretty much a taproot, right? The roots are more going down than out. So there's a lot of options for planting under honey locust trees. Katsura tree, another cool tree. I don't see it very often. It's kind of hard to sight. It looks, if you look at that leaf, it looks a lot like a redbud leaf, right? So, but the shape of the tree is quite different. Whereas a redbud is more open base-like. Katsura tree is kind of like a fat teardrop shape in the canopy. And they get these little, you can kind of see them in the picture. There's like these little finger things sticking off of here that are the fruit of the Katsura tree. He's kind of a fun one to go because, again, he's one of the first ones to start to churn. And when he really starts going, he smells like cotton candy. So that's fun. So if you're smelling cotton candy, look around and you'll probably see a Katsura tree somewhere in the area. The backdrop. So this is me, honestly. I mean, like, this is one of my biggest pet peeves as a designer, is when I see a red tree, even if it's a Japanese maple red that's red all the time, and there's a red brick house behind it. I just think it looks terrible. It clashes, right? Use contrasting colors to your advantage. Like, I literally have a color wheel in my desk that I use sometimes. Nothing's more pretty than a yellow leaf tree in front of a red brick building. I'd much rather see this than this. And we won't even talk about the hot mess that's going on here on the first floor. There's no light coming in this house at all. But yeah, so sort of mind what's behind you when you're thinking about fall color. So other things that have fall color, hostas, a lot of hostas do. Sometimes it takes a couple of years for them to kind of get the fall color going, I've noticed. This one in this picture is Patriot. It's kind of a run-of-the-mill hosta, but it's a trooper. I mean, it works great in a tough spot. There's a lot more interesting hostas out there than Patriot, but Patriot is a workhorse. Praying Hands is another hosta I like. I couldn't find a good picture of it in my archives, but it's very upright hosta. It's kind of funky looking, and he gets a scorching bright yellow fall color to him as well. Itea is a shrub. This is a native shrub. A little Henry is sort of a shorter cultivar. I love this shrub. And if I've ever done a landscape design for you, you probably have at least like a half a dozen of these in your yard. They like shade. It gets a nice sort of panicle shaped little flower on it in the late spring, early summer. Once it loses that flower, it just has a nice thick green appearance to it all summer long. And then in the fall, it turns like a burgundy sort of leaf. So he's kind of a 3-season winter. Nothing too exciting about him in the wintertime, but 3 out of 4 seasons is not bad at all for the Midwest. I really like this plant a lot. Hydrangea Chrysofolia. So oak leaf hydrangeas are kind of a hydrangea of a different horse, a horse of a different color. Where am I going with this metaphor? I don't know. But anyway, they're kind of different from most of your other hydrangeas. So he's a panicle hydrangea, which means his flower is kind of in that pyramid type shaped. But he takes quite a bit of shade, unlike other panicle hydrangeas. Now, you probably know that Annabelles take shade too, and they have sort of a rounded head. That's a different kind of hydrangea. So Hydrangea Chrysofolia is an oak leaf that has a panicle shaped flower to it. And he's a great plant on many levels. So in the spring, the flowers come out, they're white, then they kind of fade to a ruby red color. It's a nice strong flower, so it stays on typically all winter. And then in the fall, it gets these bright red leaves. Now this picture is exceptionally bright. It's more like the leaves on the back. It's sort of a darker wine kind of color, not Hawaiian punch kind of color. But he's great. And then when he loses his leaves, he has a peeling bark appearance to him, which also looks really cool. So I love oak leaf hydrangeas. You can get them in a variety of sizes, anywhere from Alice, who gets to be 12 feet tall, to Peony, which is like 3 to 4 feet high, and things in between. So Ruby Slippers is kind of a nice in between one, 4 to 6 feet. He's good for screening as well, a little dense if you don't want to put up a giant yew hedge or something like that. But yeah, Hydrangea Chrysofolia, great plant. And then of course Amsonias, right? This is another one. Arkansas Blue Stars, it has several common names. So if you're looking for this plant, you're best off looking for Amsonia on the name tag. But anyway, but he gets a little blue flower on his tops in the spring, kind of a green fluffy ball that kind of moves in the breeze all summer long. And then in the fall, he turns this bright yellow, and he's kind of he's very fine leafed, so it kind of has a little bit of movement to it in the breeze. It's kind of nice. I really like Amsonia. Rus Tiger Eyes. This is the one, admittedly, I probably don't use enough. Sumac is a great plant. You see sumacs, so a cousin to this is if you drive the Edens Expressway, right? And there's a huge stand of straight sumac, just Rose typhina, staghorn sumac, along the east side of the Edens Expressway, sort of just north of the Dempster exit. There's a big stand of it. It's bright red, usually this time of year. So Tiger Eye is one that was developed that's not, it doesn't sucker like the straight species, and it's smaller. So it's great for landscaping. He's good on the back border. He's kind of, you can see from the picture, he's kind of a gangly teenager, and he kind of always looks like this. He never gets a really nice shape. He's always kind of lopsided or something. But it's a nice plant. It gets a nice fall color to it. Again, nice fine textured leaf to it. And then Euonymus alatus odom. Okay, so burning bush. So let's talk about burning bush for a second, because there are some schools out there that say, don't use burning bush. It's the end of the world. It's going to destroy all the nature areas. So yes, burning bush is bad. The straight species is bad. Like what happens is the birds eat the little fruit on it, and then the birds fly over a nature area and poop it out, and it seeds, and it then kind of takes over the area is what happens. So, however, little Moses seems to be less fertile than the straight species. Doesn't seem to be as invasive. I'm not going to say that it wouldn't reseed, but it seems to be less prone to reseeding. And, you know, frankly, even if you lived like next to the North Branch Trail or open lands or something like that, I still wouldn't even use Little Moses on this. So, but if you're living like downtown Wilmette or, you know, in densely populated areas, Little Moses is perfectly fine to use. You're not going to disrupt the nature at all. I think, of course, the things we love about Burning Bush is that he gets this flaming red color to him every fall. Parthenogenesis quinquefolia, I think. Virginia creeper. Not typically something we use in landscape design. So in all the years I've been doing this, I have used this plant once in a landscape design, but I put him in for two reasons. So the one place I did use him was in an it was like a row house building in Lincoln Park, where someone just had sort of a lattice between them and their neighbors. So there was like a 1 foot strip wide piece of earth that was surrounded on two sides by building and two sides by pavement. This thing wasn't going to sucker and grow anywhere, right? So, and they needed some screening. So we planted Virginia creeper so that it would creep up this piece of lattice and kind of provide some screening, because nothing else would live in that space. Now, the good thing, and I wanted to include them in here as well, because one, again, don't use them lightheartedly. But two, if you're worried about invasive species in your own landscape and you have a wooded area, now is a very easy time to find Virginia creeper, because he's screaming, right? He's bright freaking red. So you can't miss him. So if you're looking for him, if you're worried about him, now's the time to find him. Really easy to find. Not to be outdone, you notice they have the same genus, Parthenogenesis tricuspitata, Boston ivy. Again, not a plant that I use lightly. You know, I know people always ask about this climbing up the side of your house, if it's a good thing or not. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, it has a great fall color. Here we see it at Wrigley Field. Those of us who are Cubs fans rarely get to see the Cubs play in October, so most of us don't realize that, yes, the Boston ivy does change color before it loses its leaves. As far as growing up houses, this is always, you'll get a different opinion from every single person you ask. But my thought is, if the mortar is in good shape, then it is fine to let the Boston ivy climb up your house. So it's very important to just have your house regularly inspected for tech pointing and etc. But if you want to do Boston ivy because your mortar's in bad shape and you think it's going to help protect from further erosion, it's not. The way this plant climbs is it gets little suckers that kind of hold on to the side of the building, and those little suckers can sometimes find their way in. There's been instances we find Boston ivy in people's attics because it has entered the building. So it's another one, just be careful when designing with Boston ivy. So dried flower heads, right? It's not just about the leaf color, there's other things going on. So dried flower heads and dried seed heads help keep structure going in the garden. And we talk about structure a lot when doing planting design, because, you know, we live in the Midwest. So unfortunately, there's not a lot happening here for a while in the wintertime. It's very barren. If you do a, you know, quote unquote native landscaping, you know, go look through Lurie Garden in February. It's kind of sad, right? There's not a lot of things going on. So we want to keep some structure in the garden. These things help us do that. I think it looks really cool when we get that really wet snow. It sticks to the stuff. I think that's just a cool look. And it helps feed birds on their migration paths. So it's important to leave some of the stuff up as long as you can. Astilbechinensis superba. So this is superba in the picture, but really all of the astilbes do this. They have a nice strong stalk, and their dried flower heads are pretty cool looking. Keep them up. You know what I mean? I think this thing in the snow is so impressive. It looks beautiful, the way the snow just sticks to it. And I really like that. And eventually, you know, like January, February, it kind of starts to fall apart and just blows away. You don't have to worry about cleaning it up in the spring. It's another thing I like about this plant. It's pretty much low maintenance, put it in the ground, water it, good. Heliopsis helianthores, really anything in the sunflower genus has these nice dried flower heads. You know, there's something about black in the landscape, which is kind of nice. It's that absence of color also has a place in a colorful landscape. And of course, the birds eat the seeds like crazy and love it. Penstemon, another native. Again, these are the dried seed heads. Looks great. It's a great plant anyway. Underutilized, frankly, but it's a great plant. I don't understand that common name, by the way, for your time. I think someone told me it has something to do with like the shape of the flower, but I don't see it. It's a bad common name. Don't get it. Echinacea. Of course, we all know Echinacea, right? And the finches love Echinacea. And I love watching them sort of like, so it's cool if you get like an Echinacea stand and it's somewhere close to like an evergreen, kind of stop and watch for a few minutes if you ever see that when you're out on your walks. And you'll see finches sort of dive bomb out of the evergreen onto Echinacea, get a snack, and then go back into the evergreen. It's kind of fun to watch. Clematis. So all clematis, except for our sweet autumn clematis, does not seem to do this, but most clematis species do this. The flower kind of dries into this swirly thing, and then the swirly turns into a puffball thing. It's just kind of cool looking. It's interesting. It's kind of like the second act, I think, for this plant. Cecillaria autumnalis, autumn moorgrass. Love this plant. I love this plant so much. This is actually the front stoop of my house. Again, he's a nice short grass. He stays upright. And then in the fall, the seed heads kind of turn this dark brown. And he's kind of a good height. You know what I mean? He's kind of like that in between height. So many grasses are just tall and need like full blazing sun or they flap. Autumn moorgrass, you can kind of cheat a little bit. Like he stays up and he'll take like a little bit of shade. Like don't go crazy with it, but like takes a little bit of shade and doesn't get too floppy. So he's a really nice one. I like him a lot. And then Calamagrostis brachytricha, right? Korean feathery grass. I mentioned this guy earlier. For those who know Carl Forster, Carl Forster is also Calamagrostis, so they are sort of cousins. Unlike Carl Forster, this has a little bit more of a vase shape. You can see he's a little bit more open. His seed heads are a lot more open and kind of fluffier than Carl Forster. So if, Carl Forster is sort of the uptight older brother, then Korean feathery grass is kind of like the hip younger brother. And he moves better in the breeze, I think, than Carl Forster. The other thing with Carl Forster, I don't want to bash Carl Forster. It's a great plant, but I've started calling it the McDonald's plant because it seems like every McDonald's and gas station has started doing their landscaping with Carl Forster grass. And so start looking. You're going to notice it now. I've ruined it for you. Every time you're going to pull McDonald's, you're going to see Carl Forster grass. Shenandoah switchgrass. This is a great plant as well as a great grass. Again, there are dozens of grasses that are fantastic this time of year. I'm just kind of hitting my top few favorites because I'm limited on time. But Shenandoah switchgrass is a great one. I owe props to my coworker Ian, who kind of turned me on to it. Because this red seed head, and it shows he holds his shape pretty well. He's not very floppy. You can see a little floppy here on the end. But look how pretty he is with this Echinacea here in the background. And look, there's our Joe Pye weed hanging out back there. So you can see, kind of get that repetition of purple. It's kind of nice. Spirobolus, a favorite, always prairie drop seed, right? It's the plant that smells like cilantro in the spring. Nice grassy thing all summer long. And then in the fall, shoots up a seed head and they kind of turn red like this, right? Great plant. Can't go wrong with just straight up Spirobolus. Terra is a cultivar of it that tends to stay a little tighter, but not necessarily shorter. So now we talk about, check the chat here, no questions. So we'll keep moving on. Fruit, right? So this is the time of year we have fruit that starts to fall off of trees. So when we're designing, we kind of have to keep in mind what's above your head, frankly. And sometimes that's hard to do or you forget. And so there's fruit that's fun, and then there's fruit that's not so much fun. Good fruit / leaf fall, right? Again, contrasting colors. I love a yellow leaf on bluestone. I think it's like just the prettiest thing that there is. I have a honey locust tree that falls on my bluestone chip patio. you know, getting honey locust leaves off a bluestone chip isn't fun. You've got to find just the right setting on the leaf blower, but it's very satisfying when you find the right setting and it gets the leaf and not the stone. But yeah, think about like where those leaves are going to fall, right? It's very pretty. Bad leaf placement is anywhere near a water feature. Every now and then I get someone who's like, who has a pool and they're like, oh, I'd love to, it's a little too sunny. Aunt Susie burns really easily. I understand Aunt Susie, I'm Irish. I don't do sun either, but do not plant a shade tree to help out Aunt Susie. Just get a big umbrella. It makes a mess of the pool. It's a never ending battle. Not just pools, but like water features too. You're fishing it out. It'll screw up the pumps. It screws up the pH of the water and you're adding chemicals. Just keep any kind of leafy thing away from your water. And then know that some stain, right? So maples in particular will stain hardscapes and concrete pavers. So things like Unilock is a paver that's made from concrete, it's poured into a form. And maple leaves in particular can stain them. That's a little harder to avoid, right? But what you can do is you can, there's ways to remove it, but even better than that, there's a way to sort of pre-treat and seal that concrete paver. Even if you had a patio put in where they, you know, put like the color seal or whatever on it, it's a good idea to have it sort of reapplied every couple of years to sort of avoid this. That's something they can sell it to you. I would go to a garden center like our store in Wilmette can kind of help you find the right product. Anything like a Home Depot or Lowe's, they're not going to have the right product for you. But that is something just to kind of deal with. It also wears off after a while if you're not too anal about it. Bad fruit. So walnuts, right? So I don't really plant walnut trees. Nobody plants a walnut tree. They're just there. But we have to contend with them, right? So I think most of us know about there's soil toxicity issues that they put into the soil, so they're kind of hard to plant underneath. But it's one that's sort of like, you know, when it's spring or summer and you're kind of thinking like, I'm going to put in that patio. Look, this tree is nice. It'll provide me with some shade. Well, look at the tree and make sure it's not a walnut tree because you're going to get clacked in the head like in October when you're sitting out there with a fire pit. So, you know, and the squirrels and then they're messy and gross. So, you know, just be careful when you're putting in a patio or something, what's over your head. Again, look up. Again, this is another look up instance. I'm not going to plant, if I planted a bur oak today, it's not going to produce acorns probably in my lifetime. So, but there's plenty of bur oaks everywhere. And so when I see a bur oak on a property and it's sitting in the middle of a lawn, that's beautiful. It looks great. I don't want to mow the grass because those acorns are going to become projectiles in my lawnmower. So what I tend to do is if I see a bur oak somewhere, I try to put a planting bed underneath it. Acorns don't really seed readily. You know, you're not going to have a million little oak saplings coming up in the spring. They actually take a little bit of work to kind of get them to germinate. So, you know, if you have oaks, try to put a planting bed around it to kind of capture most of those acorns. Squirrels will take off with them, bury them everywhere, or they'll just kind of, you know, disappear in your yard, and that way they're less trouble. Osage orange. This is another one we don't see very often. There's a lot of them in the Prairie Crossing neighborhood. If you have, if you live in that area, again, it's kind of like the walnut tree, right? Just like don't put a patio right underneath this thing, or you're going to get smacked in the head one day with these things. These are a little easier to pick up, actually. So I actually saw some landscapers who had, you know, the things you use at the tennis courts, like the high school tennis courts or whatever, that like pick up the balls, they kind of push it down and the ball pops into it. They had taken one of those, and I think they modified a little bit because it's a little bit bigger than a tennis ball, but they were using that to pick up the Osage oranges, and I thought that was pretty clever, actually. And just a little kind of old wives' tale for you that actually I've tried and seems to work is they ward off spiders. So this time of year, I live near Prairie Crossing. So sometimes I'll walk over there with a bag in my hand and gather a few of these and put them in the windowsills in my basement and corners of my garage. And it does seem to keep the spider population down a bit. Yeah. All right, this is not a cone. So all the things we see in fall, this is another one. And I've got a lot of calls about this lately from clients of mine who are like, oh, it's got this unusual cone. I think there's something wrong with the tree. No, it's not a cone at all. This is a fungus actually called cedar apple rust, which starts showing up this time of year in spades. So if you see this on your evergreen, you're going to want to prune it out. And it's kind of gross, but like just cut like right here, or you can cut right here, just like above a little branch out or a leaf. And get this thing into, the garbage. It's not toxic to you at all. But it is a fungus that kind of bounces back and forth between evergreens and crab apples. So, it's pretty harmless to the evergreen, but it can do quite a bit of damage to crabs. So cut that sucker out if you see it somewhere. Okay, fun fruit. Yay! There are things that are fun. So Cornus gusta, love this tree. It's another one in in fact, this picture is the one in my yard. He's a great little dogwood, and he is a small tree. He gets these little fruits in him this time of year. So he has flowers in the spring. He kind of gets a horizontal branching pattern after a few years. It's got to mature a little bit first. And then it has a nice green leaf all summer long. They do kind of droop like this. It's not that he's starved for water or overwatered. They're a little bit droopy. It's what they do. And then this time of year, it gets these little fruits on them, which confused the neighborhood kids because they thought it was a raspberry tree. It's like, no, it's not a raspberry tree. And then I read a blog post today. Somebody ruined this for me because they likened this to the coronavirus molecule. Which I thought was kind of creepy, but interesting in that the fact that nature runs out of ideas and has to repeat herself, obviously, after a while. So yeah, but no, it gets these like fun little red fruits. And these just kind of dry up, fall off, blow away. It doesn't make a mess at all. Nice, clean fruit. Sergeant crab apples. So a lot of crab apples get fruit. I think sergeants tend to be a little bit cleaner looking, a little brighter red. So sergeant crab apple, again, is a small tree. You can always identify a sergeant crab, getting off the topic here, but sergeant crabs, the leaves on the new growth kind of are lobed like this. You know, he's got this little like, poop, and then it comes to a point, and these other leaves just kind of come to a nice clean point. So sergeant crabs are the ones that have this like little poop on the new growth leaves. But anyway, so Malus sargentii, Malus crabapple, nice. And he'll get like a kind of a, it's not a great fall color. It's kind of like a dirty yellow fall color, but it's something. Cornus moss, cornelian cherry dogwood. Nice, again, small tree. He gets these bright red sort of oblong fruit on him this time of year. These are sort of edible. So I ate one once, and it was very bitter, but you can make jam out of it, apparently, is a thing. I can't imagine how much sugar and pectin you have to add to that recipe to make this thing edible. But, you know, if you're feeling adventurous, there are recipes out there. But yeah, he has a nice, this nice kind of fun fruit, very bright red. Again, he'll kind of get like a dirty yellow fall color. It's not fantastic, but he's a nice tree. He always has a nice shape. Cones, you can forget cones. So Korean fir, I think, has the coolest cone in the conifer family. They're bluish purple, and they stand upright. This picture's not upside down. They're like on top of the freaking stem, and they're like standing up waving to you, which is so cool. You don't really notice them. There's a few in the landscape. There's certainly at the Botanic garden. You don't really notice them because the cones are sort of up high on the tree. So he's kind of a tree to be enjoyed by the second floor of the house. So, you know, keep in mind if you ever, you know, want to see a Korean fir, you know, at the nursery center, you want to put it in your yard, put somewhere where that top of that tree is going to be enjoyable by the second floor of the structure in, you know, a few years. Junipers I like as well. I like that they have this blueberry that contrasts very nicely with the green leaf on it. You know, and if you're really adventurous, sort of like the Cornus moss people who want to make jam, you can make gin. I guess out of juniper berries. I can't imagine how many juniper berries it takes to make any kind of gin. And to me, I can't drink gin because it tastes like juniper to me. But anyway, nice blueberries on it. Chinese arborvitae, these are kind of unusual. You don't really see these a lot in the landscape, but they have this cool, like little alien looking cone on them, which is kind of fun. Cephalanthus. So Cephalanthus is again another native. This is the sugar shack cultivar. So this is, again, I'm going to warn you because this is where cultivar names become important. Cephalanthus accidentalis sugar shack is 3 to 4 feet high and wide. Cephalanthosus accidentalis, straight species, is 8 to 12 feet high and wide. So mind your cultivar names when you're shopping for plants. So sugar shack, I like because he stays small. He's great in like wetland areas. He kind of likes having, he tolerates wet feet, is what we say. Okay. It's not like wetland plants don't soak up more water. They just tolerate the wet soil better. And so he does. He tolerates wet soil pretty well. Again, he likes it well drained, sort of like the Caringashoma we looked at. But he does tolerate wet. He has the coolest looking flower, like in late summer. It looks like a little pom-pom puffball. And then that pom-pom puffball turns into like a red ball. These were just kind of getting started. I took this picture like 2 weeks ago. So they're probably pretty bright red by now. And it gets kind of a yellowish fall color, nothing to write home about, but it's, again, it's not a bad fall color. Nice plant. Magnolia. So we all love magnolias in the spring, right? If they don't get zapped by a late frost. We usually have pretty good magnolia blooms here in the Midwest. But this time of year, they kind of do this fun thing where they fruit and then this pops open and inside is magnolia seed, which is bright, bright red. So she really stands out in this kind of landscape today. So that's kind of, I just think that's kind of neat, kind of different. False Solomon seal has these fruit on it. Looks like it might be edible. It is not. Do not try making sauce out of this or anything. But it's just, again, it's kind of nice. They'll kind of get redder as the fall progresses. This thing is cool. So Japanese peony, this is not a plant I was terribly familiar with, right? I've heard about it before. We're all sort of more familiar with the peonies in our landscape, like the Sarah Bernhardts and those kind of things that are these big poofy flowers. At this time of year are just covered with a white film. This guy, the flower is okay. It kind of looks like it looks like a native plant, even though obviously it's not by the name. Kind of a chalice shaped flower. So just imagine sort of your traditional peony flower that's like missing all the inner petals. It just kind of has like 1 or 2 layers of petals. But this thing, I saw it from like 10 feet away. It's just like, it's blood red. And it's a woodland plant. So kind of in a shady area, you have this bright pop of red peeking out at you. Really striking. I think it's worth it to plant just for the fruit this time of year. Let's see if I can find one. Rosa rugosa. So roses in particular, you know, have red hips. We all know that, right? Like them or not. But the Rigoso Rose tends to have huge hips. I mean, these things are, you know, like the size of a clementine almost. Bright, 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 bright red. This is a great plant. Now, don't think about Rigoso Rose as being your pretty sweet little hybrid tea rose or, you know, any of those. It's not like a Bonica. It's not even as nice looking as like a knockout. Like this thing's kind of a hot mess plant, right? They get kind of big, but they definitely have value in the landscape. Not only because it's a beautiful rose hip in the fall, which I love. He's extraordinarily prickly. His thorns all up and down his leaves. So I have used this thing. Honestly, so there's two times I've used this plant in spades, which was designing landscapes along parkways or in islands. So you'll see this guy if you live near the Six Corners intersection of Milwaukee, Elston, and Irving Park on the northwest side. You'll see this guy planted in landscapes there. I put him there. He's also along Lakeshore Drive. So he takes salt spray very, very well. So he's great for like heavily salted areas. And because he's so prickly, he's really great in the corners of yards if you have trouble with kids cutting through your yard. So I'm not anti-child at all, but like this will, because it is so prickly, it will discourage anyone from getting anywhere near the thing. But again, bright red rose hips in the fall, which is nice. Seasonal annuals. So this is my only slide on seasonal annuals. So just some tips to kind of make it work. You can plant grasses in your summer pots to make it last the whole season. So like purple fountain grasses, which is an annual grass, fireworks grass, which is an annual grass. You know, you'll get some mileage out of them in the summer and then just kind of let them keep going. Like I had firework grass in my pots this summer along with some, you know, hot weather annuals. I just kept the fireworks grass in there, pulled everything else out, threw in some pansies. Looks fantastic. Pansies are fantastic. This is a poorly named plant. I don't know where pansy became a negative connotation because it is the toughest annual plant that there is, actually. They will take snow. They're like, if you have a light snowfall or early frost, the pansy will be like, what? Like, does something happen? Like, nothing. Like, nothing phases a pansy until it gets a really, really hard frost. And I've even seen pansies planted in the ground perennialize and come back the following year if we have like a really mild winter or if there's a snowfall that sticks around and sort of insulates the ground. So pansies are great. And I love designing for fall containers because you can't go wrong. Like, is it cabbages and, you know, the Ruby Perfection, you know, cabbages and all kinds of weird kales and millet and all this kind of stuff in pots. And it always looks fantastic. It's fun. I will say mums and peppers, while they look fantastic, do not last. So mums, once they flower, that's it, they're done. They don't keep flowering. They don't keep pushing flowers. And then peppers, once you get any kind of frost, they just turn to mush. Okay, sounds and smells. So when I designed for a landscape through all 4 seasons, we had to think about all the senses and every season. And fall, I feel like is so important because it's your last chance to be outdoors for quite a while and to socialize for quite a while, right? Because all those outdoor patios are going to start to close pretty soon. And so this is kind of your last hurrah to get in the outdoors before it gets too cold. So it's really important to kind of slow down this time of year. Mother Nature's slowing down. She's getting ready to hibernate. You know, the animals are getting ready to slow down. We see that squirrels burying their nuts. You know, if you've got pets, you're starting to see those winter coats starting to come in. Everyone's kind of getting ready to hibernate and slow down. And we should too. We're part of this ecosystem. And so we need to respond and be in tune with the things around us. And we do that by sort of absorbing everything around you in full senses. So be sure to take the time to kind of breathe things in this time of year. This is a little known spot in the Chicago Botanic Garden. This is my favorite spot, and this is my favorite time of year for this spot. It doesn't work any other time of year. It's kind of meh. But this time of year, it is the best spot in the Botanic Garden. So where this is if you go out to Evening Island, right, and there's that path that kind of goes around the perimeter, the way I'm facing it right now, my back is to that grand open lawn, right? So this little path is missed, I think, by like 90% of the people because they're all looking at that grand open lawn and the grasses and the sumac and the Carillon Tower in the distance and all that kind of stuff. But this little path, it leads up to like, there's a little council ring at the top of this hill. But if you come in here, and I tried to shoot a video of this, by the way, but it just didn't work out because videos on webinars, they never work. But anyway, you're in the Botanic Garden, like in the next week or so, or 2 or 3, these grasses will sit for a while. I think it's Dallas grass is the name of this grass. Find this little path, go in here, and just sit on this step for just a few minutes. Just sit there and soak it in. And you'll hear the rustling of the grasses. And to me, this is a lullaby, like in my world, you know, it's so peaceful and it's calm. And I love that rustle of grasses. You can't beat that sound. You know, just look up at the sky, look at the seed heads moving in the wind, look at the blue sky that's serving as your background. It's the most peaceful place to just kind of stop, catch your breath, enjoy what's around you. You know, use this time of year to gather around a fireplace, right? Fireplaces are great, okay? So yeah, they're expensive. I can hear the eye rolling here. I'm like, really? I can't afford, yeah, I can't afford a fireplace either, frankly, but like, they're beautiful. Like, and if you can afford it, like, do it. Like, most times when I've seen these gone in, they got a lot of use. Like, the people who do these, like, use them, right? And you can do them so they have a gas start in here, so it's easier to do, or you can just do like a traditional wood fire. Looks like this one's double-sided, which is pretty cool. So you can enjoy it from like the dining side over here, or just gathering over here. You have to be aware of like setback limitations in your municipalities. But fireplaces are a great structure. This is one our team designed and built. Or fire pit. Fire pits are also great options, right? Again, you can have a gas start, you can have a wood start. It's just a nice way to kind of get in there and really enjoy the fall underneath a blanket, and you end up smelling like smoke, and it's fantastic. And it's only going to last for, a month or so, and then it's done. But, enjoy this time to gather around with your friends and enjoy that. Smell of smoke and the crackling wood sounds. These are all things we kind of think about, and enjoying that experience with your family and people that you care about. And sort of like, we talked about everybody kind of, Mother Nature kind of winding down, gearing up for next year, right? We have to do that too this time of year. It's sort of what we do in designing fall landscapes. So, we start thinking about bulbs, planting bulbs. Like, now's the time of year to kind of start buying your daffodil bulbs and your crocuses and tulips and all those things. If you have a vegetable garden, I'm a huge vegetable gardener, so I've got to get this in here. But you start starting about that and seed catalogs and things you want to do next year. Now is a great time to contact the landscaping department at Chalet and get on the books. Stuff, it's hard to get stuff in this year. I'm not going to lie. We're kind of winding down ourselves. But now is the time to contact us. If you want to do something in the spring, contact us now, because now I can come to your property. I can see what you have. I can try to work with what you have. When there's 2 feet of snow on the ground in January, it's a little harder for us to do that. And if you get in now, you're like among the first ones to get in the spring. You can enjoy it all next year. Plant some bulbs, like I said. You can talk to your CRM rep or go to our store. We have tons of bulbs there. Garlic gets planted this time of year. If you're a vegetable gardener, I'm doing mine this weekend. Very easy. Note on planting garlic, you cannot buy garlic at the store and stick it in the ground, even if it's organic. They are all treated with a growth inhibitor so that they don't, even though mine seem to grow in the vegetable tray no matter what, but they won't like grow in the ground. So, buy seed garlic. The beautiful thing is you really only have to do it once, because all you do to plant garlic is they'll send you, seed garlic, and it's a bulb. You break it apart, leave that like papery kind of cover on it, stick it in the ground twice as deep as it is high, pointy end up, cover it up, throw some straw over the bed. It might start growing this fall. In the spring, it'll come back. You'll get beautiful garlic, and then you just pick the best looking bulbs, save those, and you're gonna plant them again in the fall. So garlic is one of those things that's a great investment. Like, I haven't bought garlic in years because I just keep replanting the same bulbs over and over again. Daffodils, this is a Mount Hood variety. Crocus, I like Tommy. It's a little less tasty to critters. If you're interested in bulbs, I did do a blog post earlier this year, I think in April, about my favorite bulbs that kind of go beyond the daffodils and the crocus and the tulips and some more interesting and unusual varieties. You can find that on our website. I could just scroll down, you'll see a link for blogs. And so I wrote a blog post a couple months ago about my favorite bulbs. Take a look at that. And also for your vegetable gardens, now is the time to start thinking about how you want to rotate the beds. So I'm terrible at doing this because I forget where I plant. I'll be like, oh, I'll remember in the spring which had tomatoes in it and which had carrots in it and which had, beets in it. I don't remember. Like, write it down. Just like take seconds, draw a little diagram on a piece of paper, write down what you put where, and then think about the rotation of that, right? So the critters can't find you. Ground cover crops, if you do ground cover crops in your vegetable gardens, now is the time to sort of sow your rye seed grass. It's a nitrogen fixer. And then, unlike the landscape where we want to leave up dead, dried flower heads and things like that of interest, don't do that with your vegetable garden. Clean it up, gather the dead, Get it in the composter, or, you know, if your composter gets hot, you can do that. You want to kill all the diseases and funguses and whatnot. If you don't have hot compost, cool compost, then you need to put it out in the lawn leaf bags for the CD to collect. And then shopping, right? Here's the necessities for shopping. When I do my seed shopping, I need my Seed Savers Exchange catalog, I need my Berkeley catalog, and I need my Manhattan. And then I'm set for like half a day. Seed Savers Exchange, if you do not know this organization, it's a very worthy organization. They are out of Iowa, and they contribute a lot of seeds to sort of the underground seed bank that's in Nevada or whatever. A lot of unusual seeds. Burpee, sort of your standards, but it's great. They work. And lastly, like I said, now is the time to sort of start working on your landscape for next year. You know, so if you have questions or comments or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me at this number. They'll find me. If you have any questions on the seminar, something strikes you later, or if you want to talk to a chalet representative about getting maintenance or working on a landscape design for your property, now is the time to call. There's that number. It's also on our web page. You can also fill out a form on our web page that will kind of help us best direct your inquiry for landscaping design or landscaping services, any of that. So let's see if we have, does anybody have any questions at all? We've been a very quiet group today. No, my goodness. Okay. Oh, thank you. Well, you're welcome. Thank you, Diane. You're welcome. It was my pleasure to do this today. So if that is it, we'll wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for attending. This is the first webinar I've done. So you guys were very gentle. Been a very gentle group to proceed with. So thank you so much. And I hope you have an opportunity to do this again. In the meantime, it's supposed to be kind of a rainy weekend, but a good time to plan and enjoy this beautiful fall weather in the meantime. Take care.